Beef prices are absolutely insane. And if you're like me, our only option for beef for quite a while now has just been ground beef. And those prices have even soared. But recently, I scored a 3-pound pack of ground beef for a really good price. And I have company coming to dinner. Plus, I want to be able to stretch this out for the remainder of the week. So let's see what I can do to stretch this but still make very filling meals. Welcome back, friend, to the Savvy Saver Kitchen. If you're new here, I'm Hope, or you can call me Mama Hope. My husband's working in the next room, so if you hear dings, we're eBay resellers, and hopefully we are making some sales. My computer is just kind of going crazy on the side. I am working on making a meal. We have company coming for dinner tonight. I have this 3-pound pack of ground beef that I found for a great price. It used to be that we could always find some pretty good prices on ground beef if I was able to buy it in bulk, and still the price for ground beef is better if you can buy it in bulk. If you can buy a 10-pound tube of ground beef, you're going to get the best price per pound. But we don't always have $40 or $50 to spend on one type of meat. So that's why I was so excited when I found 3 pounds for $8.99 at a local discount store. Let me correct that. It was $8.99, but it is a discount store where they add 10%. So basically, instead of it being $3 a pound, it's more like $3.30 a pound. Still a great price because I did go and check Walmart prices and Aldi prices on ground beef currently. This is September of 2025. And what I did find is that Aldi does seem to have the better price per pound. This is 80/20 ground beef. The best price they currently seem to have is like $4.99 a pound, but still, that's if you're buying it in a larger quantity. And at Walmart, if I were buying 80/20 ground beef, the best price I can currently find was well over $6.50 for a pound. So keep your eye out for sale prices. If you have discount stores, sometimes they call them cost plus. I think Save a Lot may be something like that. In our area, it's a store called Fresh Value. They're typically not the fanciest of grocery stores, but we're all looking to stretch our dollars. So I'm willing to give up a little bit of decor for better beef prices. So I'm going to start with dividing this into basically 3 pounds. First meal I'm going to make is the meal that we have company coming for, and this is going to be meatloaf. I'm going to add to that some mashed potatoes and some English peas. That's an old family favorite of ours and a little bit of a splurge because although I'm stretching the ground beef with breadcrumbs, it still is going to use a good solid pound to make the meatloaf. So let's get started on dividing up this meat, and then I'll share what I'm going to do with the rest of it. So this was ground beef that was purchased frozen, and now that it has thawed, it's got a lot of liquid on it. So first thing I'm doing is covering myself so I'm not wearing this later on. But like I said, it was frozen, so I allowed it to thaw in the refrigerator over the course of about 48 hours. So I'm going to first puncture this and drain off that liquid. Okay, so we are looking a little bit better now. I'm going to first divide this into the 3 1-pound sections, like I said. I'm going to use this for the first meal because I'm going to add other stuff to it to make the meatloaf, but that's going to be our first roughly 1 pound of ground beef for meatloaf. So the second pound, I'm going to take this and divide it roughly into 1/4 pound hamburgers. I'm going to store these in a glass container. These are probably not going to go on the grill. Usually when you freeze ground beef, and you try to make hamburgers out of it, they're not necessarily grill worthy because they don't want to hold their shape. Ready for another meal. So we're going to start by dumping our pound of ground beef to a bowl, set it aside, and I am looking to use up some vegetables that I have on hand. So I have a little bit of red onion, and I have a not so lovely looking green pepper. So I'm going to chop these up and add those to my beef. Don't want the seeds, so there we have almost a cup of green peppers. And I'm going to this is probably maybe an eighth or less than that of this red onion. So we're going to add that onion. And at this point, I'm going to add in half a cup of just plain breadcrumbs and some black pepper, garlic powder, about a tablespoon of parsley. I'm going to keep that to top it as well. About half a teaspoon of thyme. At this point, I would normally add in about 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. However, we have guests coming for dinner that is allergic to anchovies, and there is actually anchovy paste in Worcestershire sauce. So I'm not using that today. I am going to add in a little bit of some generic Heinz 57 sauce, about 2 tablespoons, and good solid 2 tablespoons of ketchup, and an egg. And then I'm just going to mix this all literally by hand. And sometimes, depending on what you add in, you may need to add a little bit more breadcrumb. And this is feeling pretty wet, so I'm probably going to do that. Another quarter cup. And get that mixed together. And then at this point, you can put it into a loaf pan, or it will hold its shape. So I am going to actually turn this over into just a glass baking dish and form it into a loaf. That way, when it's done, I can come back and cut it in slices. And then I am going to top this off with a drizzle of ketchup over the top. This ways. And a sprinkle of parsley. So this is ready to go in the oven, but because the ground beef was previously frozen, I don't want to refreeze it, and I also don't want it to sit in the refrigerator for too long in a raw state. So I'm going to go ahead and brown this so that step 1 is done. I'm just going to flavor it neutrally using some salt and pepper and garlic. pepper. We're just going to let this brown and then set it aside in a container for later in the week. So for the burger night, I did some sweet potato fries that I prepared in the air fryer. And I did end up attempting to put these burgers on the grill, so they're not pretty, but they did turn out really good. I also put a cucumber salad on the side, and this was a very filling meal. So to start off my chili, I have about a half a cup of onion and a half a cup of green peppers, and I'm sauteing that in a little bit of oil, and I'm going to add to that half of that 1 pound of ground beef that I browned earlier in the week. And then I'm adding in a full can of crushed tomato. Then I had some dried pinto beans I had prepared earlier in the week as well. So I'm adding in about a cup and a half of that. You could use canned as well, and I would probably put in 2 cans of your favorite dried beans. Then for a topper, I'm using some just plain corn tortillas that I'm going to pan fry and crisp up, and these really turned out very good. They were kind of like a light Frito. So it gives you a little crunch, a little saltiness on top of your chili, and it was just a great topper. See how nicely they crisp up, and then once they're nice and just kind of golden, not too brown, take them out and set them aside on a paper towel. Then I'm serving it up and stretching it by putting it over rice. Very, very filling meal, very simple. And that was chili night. Then Thursday was a nice chili soup day, so I'm starting off with some vegetables. I have about a 1/4 cup of onion, a half a cup of carrots, full cup of cabbage, and a little bit of green pepper, and I'm adding to that the remainder of the ground beef from earlier in the week. And this is going to be served alongside a loaf of French bread. I'm adding in a little bit of some more crushed tomato just to flavor this just a little bit more, and the majority of the soup will just be water. This meal came together quite quick and just used a few spices. Here I think I had some salt, pepper, garlic, and a little bit of thyme and some paprika. This was just a little bit of kind of clean out the refrigerator and just use up the spices that you have that are your favorites. Also added in a little turmeric because it's supposed to be very beneficial for you. So I'm trying to add it into a lot of dishes recently. So after about 30 minutes, there's what we have. A nice thick vegetable beef soup. And like I said, I'm serving it up with a slice of fresh bread that I just made that afternoon. And there we have soup night. This was actually very filling. I'm pretty sure that we only ate 1 serving of that, but we did have extra bread. So here's the summary of the week. And Friday night was lots of leftovers because there was definitely plenty.
That's it for today, friends. We'll catch you on the next one. And until then, God bless.